I've always been of the opinion that if Harris and Klebold had never met, I don't know that it would have happened, or it wouldn't have happened on that scale. But the big difference between those two and all the other school shooters is that they fed off of each other and they would ratchet each other up, and there was no one there for a reality check. So when you've got a lone shooter or a lone troubled student who is afraid, is thinking about doing something like this, usually there's a reality check somewhere. They'll say, wait a minute, what am I thinking? Our greatest fear is that those writings and the videotapes, should they have ever been released, but they, like I said, they've been reported on, that becomes the second person. That becomes the person to throw fuel on their fire. It becomes the person to ratchet them up another notch, and less likely to have a reality check if they are already a disturbed student or a disturbed person. We will never be able to prevent every school shooting. You can't. It's like saying we can prevent war or prevent anything else. If somebody is absolutely hell-bent on going into their school with a gun and pulling the trigger, it's going to be really hard to stop every one of them. We've got so many changes in school systems with panic buttons and metal detectors and tip boxes and IDs. And if you look at all of those precautions that are in Columbine today, Harris and Klebold were students. They could have still walked in that door. They could have still started shooting, maybe on the other side of the metal detector, but it still would have happened had they wanted it to happen. So we can't stop them all. But I would like to think that we have stopped a lot because of the changes that have happened. This was a failure for them. This was an absolute failure for them. The amount of people that they killed are the amount of people that they wanted at the funerals of everybody else. They wanted complete devastation. When Eric Harris was in the library right after he shot Bernal, when he leaned down and shot her with his sawed-off shotgun, it came back and hit his nose. Bree Pasquale, one of the witnesses, talks about the blood coming down, and somebody else talks about his nose. And I think that the adrenaline has to wear off at some point, and the pain has to start taking in. And I think that all along, Harris and Klebold thought, we're going to be in control of our destiny. We're going to take our own lives. We're not going to let a cop kill us. So the clock was ticking for them. They only had so much time left, and I think that the adrenaline was wearing off, mainly because of Harris's broken nose. And I think that that's why it stopped. I really do. I hate to be a voice for the Harrises or Klebolds or for anyone else, because they all have their own voice. The Harrises and the Klebolds both are pretty private families. And they had a lot of media attention. And I think that a lot of the attention was because people want to know why. And I honestly don't think that they could answer that question. So why talk? I actually run into them on occasion, and I've seen them. Obviously, over the years, we've seen each other in court. But I have no idea how they're doing. No idea. I imagine that they wrestle with their emotions as we all do that we're touched with it. That they have good days and bad days. Like any journey, there's highs and lows, and it's really difficult as somebody who was there and somebody that was in the thick of everything from almost the beginning until years later through all the investigation, and to hear the criticism of people that I work with that were heroes that day. That's a hard pill to swallow. So when we get criticized and Monday morning quarterbacked, it's really difficult to not take it personal and not feel sadness for the lack of appreciation that the heroes that day just didn't get. And part of it is just an education. They don't know. and they always take the easy way out and do a Google search, and they believe the misconceptions, on the internet. So those are the lows, but the highs. There's so many highs because law enforcement changed because of Columbine. Investigations changed, SWAT changed, schools changed, the laws changed about guns. There was so many positive changes that there's these huge highs that without Columbine, law enforcement would not have progressed as quickly in such a short amount of time. Because the first day was it was all about making that scene safe, because I couldn't get into the school until the following morning because we were concerned about bombs, and we were concerned about because there was live bombs throughout the school, and so they didn't know if they were booby trapped. Because one of the things that's rarely reported on is they had a diversionary bomb that went off just before Columbine, and when the investigator Bill Marin went there and checked it out, he talked to the guy who was there and saw the explosion. He was one of those road crew guys that was doing grading for the road, and he said that he saw a backpack and it was in his way where he had to put up his tripod. So he picked it up and he moved it and he walked away and it blew up. So that led the investigator to believe that the device might have been motion sensitive, that once it was moved, it blew up. So when he gave that information back to the school, the SWAT team was just entering the cafeteria. And those 451 kids left behind 450 backpacks and duffel bags. And the alarms and the fire hydrants had been going off. So they're literally up to their ankles in water. And as they're going through, seeing, where's the target, where's the bad guy, these duffel bags and backpacks are hitting them in the legs, and every time they're thinking, is this the one that's going to blow up? I can't imagine that kind of pressure myself. And and I still get emotional because it's those stories of those heroes that people don't know about. If law enforcement is asking me that question, the answer is always been make your plans. Make your plans, be prepared for school shootings, be prepared for an active shooter, be prepared for bombs, be prepared for multi-jurisdictional response, be prepared, plan, plan, plan. And when it's not working, change the plan. In the heat of the moment, if something is not working, don't say, but I have a plan, I got to do this. Throw the plan out the door and start over again right there. I always tell the first responders and the line officers that I train, the bottom line is that you have to do something. You have to do something. And whatever you think is the right thing to do is probably the right thing to do. And you will probably be criticized for it and Monday morning quarterbacked for it. Because after something happens, you've got all this time to evaluate, well, if you had just done that. And a great example is there have been people that have said if they would have just hit the fire alarms and everybody would have just followed the fire alarm system and everybody would have just all ran out, then we wouldn't have had as many victims. Well, that's what happened in Jonesboro. They hit the alarm, and when the kids ran out, they picked them off. So in that situation, that's not a good idea. So if the plan's not working, change the plan. That's what I would tell law enforcement.